Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'd like to thank Dan Steck for inviting NYSCOBA to today's event. Um, as of now, we're speaking. President Powers will be speaking, Senator Dan Steck, Assemblyman Matt Simpson, also Assemblyman Jake Ashby. My name is John Roberts. I'm the Northern Region Vice President for NYSCOBA, covering the northern part of New York State for the New York State Correction Officers. Violence in prisons has skyrocketed since the implementation of HALT on April 1st. Specifically, here at Great Meadow, we've had several major incidences since HALT, and the alarming number of officers being hurt on an almost daily basis. Sunday, June 19th, also Father's Day, started with one inmate attempting to skip the line to use the phone in the yard, ignored officers' orders by getting back in line, and assaulted officers. Shortly after that, a large group of inmates attacked more officers. In all, 15 officers need to be treated for various injuries, 5 of them transported to Glens Falls Hospital. A makeshift weapon was recovered after the incident, which would have caused serious life-threatening injuries to any officers or inmates involved in the incident. On Monday, another incident, May 30th, several staff observed an inmate cutting himself in his cell. Trying to save his life, they opened the cell. Instead of cutting himself, he turned and cut officers, just trying to save his life. 9 more officers that day were treated for injuries, 1 transported to Glens Falls Medical Hospital. My heart goes out to the officers and these families of these individuals getting hurt on a daily basis in the prison system. Just this week, across the street at Washington Correctional Facility, a medium, we had an officer with a broken orbital. Also, another officer bit in the finger, a chunk taken out of his skin. These are just examples of what happens inside the prison on a daily basis, on the prison behind me and also across the street here. With more on HALT, I'm going to introduce President Powers from NYSCOBA.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As John said, I'm the president of NYSCOBA. My name is Michael Powers. We're here to talk about the HALT Act and the HALT law that went into effect on April 1 of this year. The HALT Act has done nothing to improve the lives of the people who reside in New York's correctional facilities and or for the people that work in it. HALT severely limits or in some cases eliminates the ability to remove and separate dangerous individuals from the general population for any meaningful amount of time. This has created an environment where the dangerous predators who meet to do harm to others can do so with little to no consequence. These violent individuals know all this too well, and they're taking full advantage of this poorly thought out law. Our prisons are more dangerous than they've ever been. And those statistics since 2014 to current date can show that, and that's data that comes directly from docs. The numbers speak for themselves. Attacks on staff are at record high rates, up 37% since April 1. April 1 being the date of the enactment of the HALT law. 37% on staff, 30% on inmate or incarcerated individuals on incarcerated individuals. 30% since April 1. Those numbers will set the standard next year that'll far exceed any of the numbers that we've had in the previous years. Attacks not on just our officers are being brutally attacked. Inmate violence is up, as I said, 30%. We've seen large fights with weapons at a number of our facilities, including Green Haven, Washington, Clinton, Great Meadow, Attica, Auburn. Many assaults on staff that have occurred in those facilities. In just under 4 months of HALT, two inmate homicides have taken place. That matches the total number of homicides in our correctional facilities in the last 4 years. Since April 1, 2 homicides have occurred in our correctional facility. This couldn't have been the outcome the supporters of HALT had envisioned when they passed this bill. NYSCOBA warned everyone that this would happen, and sadly, we were right. Ignoring the violence doesn't make it go away. Our calls to repeal this law have been loud and strong, and they'll continue to be loud and strong. We'll hold the individual sponsors of this law responsible for all the injuries that occur to our members, to the incarcerated individuals, and to the civilian staff that may fall into harm's way as well. The sponsors of this legislation and the people that passed this law never had a conversation with the shareholders, never had a conversation with any of the men and women who stand behind us. That none of that occurred going forward. We saw the pitfalls. We're the ones that worked the facilities and humped the tiers and walked the yards. We're the ones that know how these operations work. None of that was a conversation held with us during this time. And as I said, we will hold the legislators responsible for these. Each and every act, we will inundate their inboxes with the pictures of the violent assaults that occur to our members, to incarcerated individuals, and to the operations. One thing, another aspect that was never covered, they never gave us the resources to be able to implement this very descriptive law that came into place. We don't have the resources. Our staff are understaffed. Our staff are working countless overtime hours since the pandemic, and more so even now. Our men and women that stand behind us are working continual hours. Quality of life they are suffering due to this HALT Act, based off the simple fact that we weren't given the resources to be able to implement this, and we knew it was never going to happen from the beginning. We've had ample evidence, of what HALT has created. 4 months of data since April 1st. 2 people again have died. The blood of our members and the blood of the individuals that are housed in these facilities are on the legislators' hands that supported this bill and passed it. Thank you to Senator Steck, Assemblyman Simpson, Assemblyman Ashby, and minority leaders in both houses for carrying the repeal HALT legislation. We hope to see some traction with that in the next legislative session, and will continue to stand and fight for our members and our facilities from this day forward. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Senator Steck.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for all that all of you do every day. These facilities are open 24/7, 365. Somebody is there every day of the year. Christmas, Easter, Yom Kippur, July 4th, birthdays, kids' birthdays, anniversaries. 24/7, there's people in here watching what the people of the state of New York send them, give them. Tell them these are people that need to be incarcerated for whatever reason. Sadly, more so in recent history, and to be very blunt, in the last 3.5 years under one-party Democratic rule, when all the levers of government in Albany were placed under Democrat control January 1st, 2019, following the 2018 election, there's been a pattern where we've been making more things legal, we're decriminalizing behaviors. This HALT Act is part of a much larger theme. And while I have several correctional facilities in my district, and I have visited each and every one of them at least once, most of them multiple times. I've been in, later today I'll be going inside Great Meadow. But I've been inside these places. I know what a special housing unit looks like. I know what the general population units look like. Debating the HALT bill last year on the Senate floor, I was a key debater in that, and I was asking the sponsor and asking the members across the aisle how many of them have been inside and seen what they're talking about. They're voting on things that they haven't experienced. They haven't been inside. I'll draw the parallel to guns. Most of them don't know what a difference between firearms. On debate, guy carrying a bill didn't know what a .22 was. And we're passing laws that impact people's freedoms, their constitutional rights. And the parallels I see with the gun laws and the criminal justice laws, bail reform, the SAFE Act, there's one theme, is that the Democrats think that they know best. They have purposefully ignored taking input from the people that know what they're doing, know what the implications are, but most importantly, have to deal with the ramifications that follow from the decisions that come out of the second floor in Albany after we vote on them. We saw it with the SAFE Act, we're seeing it with bail reform, and now we're seeing with the repeal bill. This repeal bill has only been in a law since April 1st, and as President Powers pointed out, over 33% total inmate and staff assaults increase in just a few months that this has gone in place. but they were told that this was going to happen by NYSCOPA and the other people that work in corrections last year when we voted on it. They certainly were told about this on the floor of the Senate and the Assembly under debate. We said, if you remove a tool for controlling behavior, you are going to get worse behavior. And frankly, we said, if you don't care about the officers and the civilian staff safety, and this is all about taking care of inmates, guess what? Inmates prey on inmates. This is a safety issue for them. People are angry at the one-party rule that's resulted in decreased public safety in our state. And this HALT Act is one of the most egregious ones because it's a very easy thing to understand. You're putting dangerous predators behind walls. You're asking our fellow citizens to watch them, to feed them, to keep them safe from one another, but most importantly, to keep them from accessing the rest of us outside. And you've taken away their ability to control behavior. And as a result, you are seeing an increase in violence. Now, our governor conveniently chooses when to insist on more data before making a decision or choosing a direction. Data didn't stop her from reacting to the Supreme Court's gun legislation a couple weeks ago. Data be damned. She knew what we needed to do, and it was rammed through in a matter of hours without the public having an opportunity to see it. There's all kinds of data on bail reform. There's all kinds of data on what HALT is doing inside. It's very simple data. It's readily available. It's collected by the administration. I'm not making this data up. This isn't partisan data. This is their own data. And I can only wonder, what is the data point that Governor Hochul and the Democrats are waiting for the number of staff deaths to go from 0 to 1 or to 5 or to 10? I want to know what that data number is, because we're here today not by accident. This press conference was set up last week in response to 15 officers being injured at Great Meadow right behind me. 15. 5 of them went to Glens Falls Hospital. And that's in my district, and I carry the bill, and I'm proud to be the author of the bill to repeal HALT. But I carry that bill, and this is in my district, and these are my constituents that are being assaulted. And so we're here. But as fate would have it, just 2 days ago, after this press conference was set, right across the street at a medium security prison, 3 more officers were assaulted. One had to go to the hospital, damage to his eye, for doing his job, for keeping us safe. In Albany, the Democrats have placed criminals' rights and criminals' well-being and criminal comfort ahead of the rest of us, ahead of public and ahead of victims. What an upside-down world we're living in. And again, it's a political world that we live in, and it's a political time of year, and everything that I said is true. And if it's inconvenient politics for some on the other side of the aisle, this is the bed that you've made. And everything that we're saying here is true, and it's backed up by facts, it's backed up by data, and it's backed up by every man and woman standing behind me. And this is just one facility. And you travel around the state, and you're going to get the same story everywhere else. So public safety is important to you. Pay attention to what's happening here. Pay attention to what your friends and neighbors that work in these prison facilities are saying. They're coming home with, and they're telling you what's happening. They're not making it up. They have difficult jobs already. And all that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and Governor Hochul has done in the last 4 years that they've called all the shots is made their job much more dangerous and much more difficult. It's unacceptable. It's time to repeal HALT. And when you sit down and you want to write legislation that affects corrections, talk to the corrections officers. When you're going to talk about bail reform and discovery reform and things that affect the cops and the district attorneys, then talk to the cops and the district attorneys. And if you're going to tinker with the Second Amendment, then talk with people that know the difference between a semi-automatic and a fully automatic weapon. Don't send people to the floor to debate something that they're clueless about. It's insulting, but more importantly, it's dangerous. With that said, I want to introduce the co-sponsor that carries this bill in the Assembly. He's been a great champion as well for corrections, and he's my friend. He's done a great job, and we're also in his district, Assemblyman Matt Simpson. Matt.
Thank you, and I really want to thank all of the COs and all of the members of NYSCOPA that are here and their families. And that's important to remember. You know, one of the first pieces of legislation when I became a member of the Assembly was this HALT Act. And it was rushed through, it was presented in a way that was not factual, it was a lie on the floor in reference to an incident in Rikers Island. It was a response, and it was a political response. It wasn't done in the nature of making our facilities safer or protecting the incarcerated individuals or our New York State employees. It was a political fix, and it was wrong. And since then, before the end of session, the sponsor of the bill in the Assembly said on the Assembly floor, he admitted, he says, if we don't have this right, then let's get together and let's work on it and let's make it right. And since that time, which was late May, it's been nothing but silence. Silence from the governor, silence from the majority, the Democratic majority that passed this disastrous bill that has resulted in, you heard the numbers, a 37% increase in violence. This isn't right. If this was in your community, there would be outrage. There would be action. And we've seen action from Albany when we see incidences of violence. But the action was the wrong action. It wasn't something that actually provided for a solution. We need to not only protect the incarcerated individuals, but we have a responsibility to our New York State employees, our people that are representing us. This is a tough job. First time I toured a facility, I had a hard time sleeping. These are people that did something violent, did something wrong, that deserve this. But what they didn't deserve is the violence and the lack of discipline in those facilities. And that's the responsibility of our COs to provide that discipline and that responsibility there. And they do a great job. But this HALT Act really took a lot of their tools away. A lot of the things that inmates, incarcerated people will think about as a result of their actions. We need to do something now. And if the governor and the Assembly sponsor of this bill is serious, then call us back. Let's not wait till January. What is the metric that they're waiting for to act? These people deserve to go home in one piece. And their families need to know that New York State has their back and is protecting them. In what job, what responsibility does New York State have that doesn't account for the people that work for us? So I asked the governor, what is it going to take? How many lives do we have to risk? How many families do we have to allow to not know if their loved one's going to come home the same way they left? That is on every member's shoulders that supported this without understanding what's going on in the prison. So I'm hoping that I hear from my Assembly colleague that said, let's get together, let's fix this if it's not right. I'm holding him accountable for it. And I'm also asking the governor, when is she going to act? When is she going to call us back, work together, find a solution, protect our hardworking New York corrections officers and our incarcerated individuals? Thank you. And I would like to introduce my friend and colleague, Assemblyman Jake Ashby.
My name is Jake Ashby. I'm an assemblyman for the 107th District, which represents parts of Rensselaer County, Columbia County, a little bit of Washington County. And I'm thankful to be here today. I want to thank Senator Steck, Assemblyman Simpson, President Powers, and all of the men and women who are here today who are part of corrections. I'm here today to push for the repeal of HALT. But I'm also here as a person who voted in favor of it. And that was a mistake. And to the men and women behind me, I apologize. But I know that an apology is not enough. You can come up here and say you're sorry, but what are you really doing to make a change for that? And I'm proud to sign on to the repeal of HALT. I'm proud to support it with my colleagues. and it should be on both sides of the aisle. At this point, the violence that we've seen and the short time that we've seen it implemented is unprecedented. And I know that word gets thrown out a lot these days in politics, but it really is unprecedented. We need to continue pushing for this, and there's no answer, there's no reason at this point why we're not going back and getting called back into a special session, just like we did a couple weeks ago, for the benefit and the safety of the men and women behind me and the inmates and the people that reside in the prison. It's had an equally horrible, horrible impact on their lives. The stories that I've heard, the friends that I have who work in corrections, it's just been unbelievable. And so I will not stop in my support of the repeal of this legislation. Thank you.
Thanks, Assemblyman. So those are our speakers. I'll just close before answering, opening to questions. The main complaint, the main fallout from HALT is that it has emboldened already violent and dangerous people that are violent enough where they need to be incarcerated. It has emboldened them to do more of what sent them there in the first place. We've concentrated the prison population by releasing lower level offenders. Whoever's left in these prisons is there for good reason. Many of them are violent people, and they have been sent the message by the state of New York that there are fewer repercussions. These are people that the law and the consequences and the repercussions that most little kids learn in kindergarten, and certainly they come to fully understand in adulthood, have ignored that to the point where they're incarcerated. You are sending them a message that rewards them for bad, dangerous, violent behavior. I want to know what the data point is that the Democrats and Governor Hochul that are responsible for this law are waiting for before they take action. I pray to God that we're not here at a press conference in the future talking about a fatality on a staff member. So, if that blood, whose hands will that blood be on? I'll let you decide, but I think that everyone standing here knows whose hands that blood will be on, and I'm trying to avoid that, as is everyone that's here. Again, I want to thank President Powers. I'm going to ask him to come up and close, but I want to thank him and his team and all the members of NYSCOPA and all the civilian staff and our officers inside our facilities for the difficult job that they do each and every day, 24/7. The assault inside Great Meadow behind me occurred on Sunday, June 19th, Father's Day. 15 officers were assaulted. Many of them were assaulted on Father's Day, and they were fathers. The good news is they all made it home to their families. But if the state of New York can't stand up and do better for fathers on Father's Day, working at a correctional facility that get assaulted by the very inmates that they're responsible to keep law and order for, then we need a change in leadership at the top of state government. President Powers, thanks for being here today. If you please close us out. Thank you.
Sir. I just want to emphasize something, and I want you to understand something here. That not only is the violence increased significant amounts of rate at huge rates since April 1st, but there's been another impact on, and I touched upon it a little bit as far as the procedures for HALT, and that's increased the workload of many of the men and women who stand behind us that are holding it down in very difficult times and understaffed positions. And it's I want to emphasize, and I'm sure I'll get a good bevy of attention here, but of all the officers that are here, how many have had to have multiple mandate shifts thrust upon you by a show of hands? That affects quality of life. That affects their homes, their families. The fact that they're dealing with the stressors of the violence that are in these facilities that has increased significantly. Every one of them just about put their hands up, if they all didn't. And with that being said, that needs to be considered as well going forward. I know that Senator Steck touched upon that a little bit at the end, but at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Their coaches, EMTs, firefighters, they provide a great service to their communities, not only by keeping it safe working in these correctional facilities, but losing quality of life with their families and their loved ones. That needs to be emphasized as well, because that's what they're living right now. And that's why we're here today, because the HALT law stinks from top to bottom, and there was no consideration from the shareholders going forward. I just wanted to emphasize that in our closing. Again, I want to thank Senator Steck, Assemblyman Simpson for sponsoring the legislation, and we'll obviously be very vocal on the floor and in the halls of the Capitol and the LOB next year moving forward. And again, I want to thank them for their support. With that, we'll take any questions.